If you feel overwhelmed and stressed, maybe on the verge of burnout or not feeling like yourself, and you know that you need time for self-care, you want to practice mindfulness, you want to make art, but you just don't have any time, I have a really heartfelt story that I'd love to share with you, as well as 3 tips that you can start incorporating mindfulness and art into your day in as little as 2 to 5 minutes. They share with me how simple yet profound it is, that they can notice a shift in their mood, in their focus, and how they're feeling, that they feel less stressed in literally 2 to 5 minutes of doing these breathing and doodling practices together. So I'm going to show an example of one of these breath doodle practices. A few months back, I met a mother of 3 working 2 jobs. She was my cab driver. She started asking me what I did for a living, and when I told her that I teach mindfulness and art classes, she started sharing with me how she felt really overwhelmed and stressed out, and she wanted to meditate, she wanted to get back to her art making, but that she didn't have any time. And she said that she had started recently snapping at her kids more because she was just so tired and tapped out. And she said that she felt really guilty because she wasn't showing up as the mom that she knew she typically was. And so she asked me how I incorporate mindfulness into my day in really quick ways. So I shared with her, since she's driving a car, she could potentially take a breath at every stoplight. She could, as she walks through a doorway at her home, she could have each doorway be a signal to remember to take a breath. I shared one of my breath doodling practices that I teach, but on your pant leg while she's driving or while you're driving, you can just, as you inhale, move your finger up, and as you exhale, move your finger down. You can also do that in an infinity shape. And so I shared all of this with her, and I started feeling bad myself because I'd had an idea to create an online mindful art course all about my breath doodle practices, which is incorporating the breath, mindfulness, and art making that you can do as doodles in less than 5 minutes. And I'd had this idea to make this course, and it didn't happen. And I felt bad because I wanted to just give her this course, and I didn't have anything to give her. So that next day, over the weekend, for the next 2 days, I made this breath doodles course. And now it's one of my most favorite courses for my students. They share with me how simple yet profound it is, that they can notice a shift in their mood, in their focus, and how they're feeling, that they feel less stressed in literally 2 to 5 minutes of doing these breathing and doodling practices together. So I'm going to show an example of one of these breath doodle practices, and if you feel called, I would love for you to check out the course and join as well. This practice really focuses on the pause in our breath. So I'll show you a brief example here, and then I'll guide you through the practice together. You'll notice as we inhale, we're moving up the page in the shape as you emphasize the pause of your breath, and then exhaling. So whenever you're ready, you're welcome to join along with me here. You can see my last breath I took here was an inhalation because I have the pause point at the top of the breath. So on my next exhalation, my natural next exhalation, I'll allow my pen mark to begin moving downward. So the invitation is to be as true to your breath as possible with this practice. Noticing as well, you want your breaths to be easy, comfortable. You don't have to extend or elongate the breath to get anywhere. Really noticing that pause. It can be interesting to notice how your pause changes the same way that your breath changes. I find our pause in our breath is something we don't typically spend as much attention on. We don't tend to notice it without intentional awareness because it is this process that the body naturally does. Very commonly, when we notice our body during meditations, we oftentimes notice the front part of our body, perhaps noticing our chest or the breath coming in and out of the nose, but how often do we notice our back body, our back resting on the chair, even noticing how our breath moves and changes behind our chest area on the sides of our ribs. So these practices, the different doodle Zen practices I'll be sharing with you, are also a different way in to notice our breath and a different way to reflect that each time on the page. Now, I've been following my breath naturally. You may have been doing that as well, or you might be following along with my lines. For these next few, I'm going to invite you to have an intentional breath, perhaps counting to 3 or 4 on the inhalation and exhalation, as well as having that count on the pause. So you may want to begin with the count of 3. I'll guide you through it, and then you're welcome to do that on your own. So 3 breaths, inhaling, 2, 3, pause, 2, 3, exhaling, 2, 3, pause, 2, 3, inhaling, 2, 3, pause, 2, 3, exhaling, 2, 3, pause, 2, 3, inhaling, 2, 3, pause, 2, 3, last to exhale, exhaling, 2, 3, pause, 2, 3, and just letting the controlled intentional breath go, returning back to your natural breath. Perhaps noticing what that was like for you. For me, I felt like the 3 count breath was a little too short from what my natural breathing was. You can see that by the marks on the page. I think a 4 count breath would feel more comfortable for me today in this moment, although that may change to a 3 or a 5 count breath on different days. So just noticing what feels comfortable and natural to you in this moment. For these next handful of breaths, I'm going to be silent while we make marks together. And afterwards, I'm going to offer some questions and prompts for self-reflection. So I hope you enjoy your practice with me. Once you finish that breath, noticing the shape as it may have changed across your page. Some days you can see here when I did this drawing the breath practice, I was really pretty steady and even with my breath. And so you can see the differences. And so just noticing that, naming that, there's nothing right or wrong about that. It's just a different variation of the breath. I always say our breath is an indicator of that particular moment in time. It's like a fingerprint that we're putting in sand. So you're welcome to journal if you'd like, or you can place a comment below and just share what did you notice about the pause. See you in the next exercise.